Hi friends, in this video, let's go over how to make a couple of easy antioxidant-rich desserts. Each dish takes about 10 minutes or less to prepare. We will make a cold dessert and a warm dessert. Now, if you don't have time to listen to the explanations of why I chose my ingredients, feel free to skip to the chapter of your interest. Now, today I'm going to show you two of my favorite snacks. The first one will be a high protein and high fiber frozen dessert. And the second one will be a flourless, high protein, high fiber chocolate cookie. Now, they both rank in the thousands for their antioxidant points, but the cookie will score even higher, and you're going to see why. Now, I am a minimalist when it comes to cooking because I hate washing dishes. So you will need a tall container, like a mason jar, a fork to mix your ingredients, and if you have a blender like this, that would make your life a little bit easier, but if you don't have one, that's okay. A measuring spoon will be helpful. Parchment paper to bake the cookie or a cookie sheet would be good to have, and an ice cube tray. Now, if you don't have these ingredients, then we can improvise. You can use a large gallon Ziploc bag to mix your ingredients up, and you can just mush it up with your hands. Now, here are the ingredients. Notice there is no added sugar in any of my desserts. Every single solid ingredient has fiber. I have 8 ingredients that are a rich source of protein, 2 ingredients that are a rich source of omega-3 fats, and all of these ingredients are anti-inflammatory in their own unique ways. Now, I went online and plugged these ingredients in Sprouts. It's just a random store that I pulled up because I wanted to show you how much it would cost in Scottsdale, Arizona. So if you bought everything on that list, it would cost $54.72. However, this list of ingredients would last several meals and could feed more than a person. I have a friend who lives on $20 a week for her grocery budget. Yes, that's right. $20 a week is her grocery budget in America. She is trying to save money. And so she lives in Southern California, and I taught her how to maximize her nutrition in every bite. So she basically optimizes her spending to get the most nutritional value for her penny. Now, as you know, groceries are quite expensive these days. So she has to space it out when she buys the more expensive items. And this way she can slowly collect them over time. But you will see that healthy food isn't always expensive. And you can still buy very nutritious things for less than $5. Now, each can of beans is 3.5 servings. A can of oats has 13 servings. Flax seeds have 12 servings. So if I bought just those 3 items, it would cost me $8.65. And if I ate all of those in one meal, just a single serving, so a serving from the can of beans, a serving for a flaxseed, and a serving of oats, that would be 20 grams of protein and 21 grams of fiber. Now, just that one meal with those 3 items would surpass the average fiber intake of over 90% of Americans. And per serving, the beans would cost less than 50 cents. The flaxseed would be a quarter, the oats another 30 cents. So this whole thing would be about $1. Okay, to make the cookies, you need either a hand blender or a regular blender, or you can use a granite mortar or a fork, or basically just your hands to mush. Now, I like to use tools because I don't like to get my hands so dirty, and you just need something to pound the beans and to emulsify the beans and the dates. Now, I've done it with a fork, which gives you a good workout in your forearm. If you have kids, this is a fun dessert that they can play with their hands. The cooked beans are really soft. It's really good practice for finger dexterity. However, for really young kids, beans can be a choking hazard, so you really should supervise them. Now, first you want to open your cans and rinse the can under running water. I like to rinse the beans to get whatever contaminants and extra phytates that may be in the liquid. I also try to buy BPA-free linings, and if possible, if you can get your beans in a glass jar, that would be best because glass is inert. Now, this canned bean has a total of 22 grams of fiber and 25 grams of protein. Now, you can't even buy a McDonald's hamburger for that price. And by the way, the hamburger only has 12 grams of protein and has no fiber. Now, if I ate the can of beans, I would actually get nearly half of my required protein intake for the day. Now, you can calculate your protein needs by going to this website and plugging in your weight, your height, your assigned sex at birth, your age, and your activity level. Now, next, I'm going to pour a cup of soy milk in a tall container. And if you're allergic to soy, then you can use your favorite plant-based milk, or you can use water. I like to use soy milk because it has calcium, protein, as well as phytonutrients specifically related to soy. For peri- and postmenopausal women with difficulties going through the change, soy can help dampen those menopausal hot flashes and night sweats due to its phytoestrogens. Now, there are many other foods with different isoflavonoid and lignans that also function as phytoestrogens. Soy is especially high in two of them. For men, don't worry, you're not going to have like big chests from eating normal servings of soy. Otherwise, billions of men in Asia would be walking around with big chests. To the soy milk, I would add 2 giant spoonfuls of wheat germ and ground flaxseed. Now, wheat germ has another 4 grams of protein per tablespoon. Now, if you have issues with gluten, don't use wheat germ. I make it a point to eat wheat germ daily for its longevity and anti-aging compound called spermidine. Spermidine stabilizes DNA, it reduces inflammation, it enhances mitochondria function, and it activates autophagy. Spermidine is actually a molecule your own body can make from the amino acid arginine. However, as you age, your levels of spermidine declines. And by the time you're in your 50s, you have half the amount of spermidine that you did at your peak. So if you want to stay healthy and improve your health, you have to increase your spermidine production and or increase the intake from food. So how do you do that? Well, here is how spermidine is made. You need to efficiently convert homocysteine to methionine with the help of folate. Now, remember how I said spermidine stabilizes your DNA? Well, when you are folate deficient or inadequate, you get more DNA mutations because you don't have the spermidine to help stabilize your genes. The consequences are defects in metabolism. Now, every medical doctor will recommend to every expecting mom to supplement with folate to protect her unborn child from neural tube defects. Diets low in fresh fruit and vegetables are associated with folate deficiencies unless you are eating animal livers or supplementing with folate. Would you take a folate supplement to meet your daily needs? I'm sure if you are pregnant. So just because you aren't pregnant, does that mean it's okay for you not to take a nutritional supplement to make up for your dietary deficiencies? And many people, they think so. They don't think they need to take vitamin and mineral supplements. But our government doesn't think that's okay. The US FDA has required folic acid to be enriched in grains since 1998. That won't help people who are on a grain-free diet. Despite fortifying grains, around 12.8% of people still have inadequate levels of folate in America. That's about 40 million people. Adequate folate prevents DNA breaks. DNA breaks are DNA mutations that can lead to cancer and autoimmune diseases. Every year, 1.9 million people are newly diagnosed with cancer, and more than 24 million people have some autoimmune disease. This is why you can't just look for protein. An added bonus of wheat germ is healthy hair, and hence I make it a point to eat wheat germ daily to reduce hair loss. Now, I bet similar compounds are in other grains and legumes and beans because when I started regularly to eat them, I noticed my hair grew faster and darker. And by the way, you're not going to get much spermidine in animal products. And believe it or not, wheat germ is the stuff processed food companies throw away to make your donuts, cakes, and bread. So you have to either transition to whole wheat flour or eat the whole wheat kernel or just go get a bag of wheat germ and add it to your food. It's also a great prebiotic to promote the growth of beneficial gut microbes called bifidobacteria. Another reason I use flax seeds is because it serves as a great binder since I have no eggs in this cookie. You need a binder or the ingredients will fall apart. And this is the chemistry of cooking. Flax seeds are rather large. They're about half the size of a pumpkin seed and the coat is quite hard. So it's important to grind it up before you eat it. You can also find flaxseed meal, which is already ground. There's actually several natural whole plants that can serve as a binder, but I chose flax seeds because they are excellent to reduce high blood pressure by inhibiting enzymes that make oxylipins, which raise blood pressure. And this effect gets better over time. If I'm a betting person, I would bet I will get high blood pressure as I grow older since half of America has high blood pressure. There is no disease that doesn't affect blood flow, so I purposely seek foods that reduce blood pressure. And by the way, flax seeds also reduce liver inflammation, it improves insulin sensitivity with lower hemoglobin A1C numbers, and it can help people lose a couple of pounds. The lignans in flaxseed, they also have anti-cancer effects, and they have been shown to be beneficial with prostate and breast cancers. Now next I'm going to add my beans, about 3 cups of mixed beans, and on top of the beans I am adding 6 pitted medjool dates. The dates add sweetness to the beans. So now it's time to blend it all together to emulsify the flavors. And at this stage, if you don't have a blender, you can use a mortar and pestle or a fork, or basically your hands in a Ziploc bag and mush the beans and dates together as much as possible to get them blended. Now, if the dates are hard, the hand blender will struggle a bit and ingredients will splash, so you may want to cover it before you start. If you buy really soft dates, it'll be easier to use to break up with your fork or fingers to mix everything together. Now, this dough should be creamy like cake frosting. It should not run like pancake or cake dough, and it shouldn't be as dry as bread dough. Otherwise, you don't have enough liquid to soften the dried fruit and rolled oats. And at this point, this dough is edible. We have not used anything that is not edible separately. Now, keep in mind, typical cookie and cake doughs are not edible because they are made out of processed flours, which are known to be contaminated with foodborne pathogens with several outbreaks and multiple bacteria, including E. coli and salmonella. And that's before you even put the raw egg in. 48 million people get food poisoning every year in the United States, and nothing has been done to change this problem. The worst part is that 200,000 of those people, they will develop chronic symptoms, including irritable bowel syndrome. Now, this is another reason why you should stay away from flour. So now you can split your dough into half for the frozen dessert and the other half to continue to make the cookie. And so that's what I did. I like to put my dough in ice cube trays because it takes a bit to melt. Now, there is no added fat and the ingredients are already low in fat, so it will be harder than ice cream. But when it is slightly melted, it's kind of like a soft swerve texture. And personally, I think it's a perfect texture. Now, ice cream is creamy because it is full of saturated fat and cholesterol, and that's why you can scoop it frozen. But it also needs emulsifiers to make it creamy. And emulsifiers actually can destroy your gut microbiome and emulsify your mucin that is protecting you from your bacteria. Now, I used to eat this ice cream when I was pregnant. It was my favorite ice cream. It had 60% of my daily serving of saturated fat, and I easily had more than one serving every day. And on top of that, it had 130 milligrams of cholesterol. Now, I've never had high cholesterol in my entire life, except for this time when I binged and ate this ice cream. There's almost as much cholesterol as a small egg, but at least an egg can grow a chick. That just grew my waistline. And when I stopped eating high-fat products, I literally lost 30 pounds while I was pregnant. That's how much weight I gained, giving myself permission to eat anything I wanted during pregnancy. But then that gave me gestational diabetes. Gestational diabetes is associated with a lifetime risk of up to 60% of developing diabetes, which is only true if you continue to eat high saturated fat foods that led to developing diabetes. And this is why I eat the way I do now and avoid adding fat. And because our dough has no added fat, sugar, or emulsifiers, it will be more difficult to scoop immediately out of the freezer, which means it will take longer to defrost. But if you make it in smaller portions, it will defrost faster. Plus, I purposely make smaller portions so that I don't overeat. Now, although all these ingredients are healthy on its own and much healthier than traditional ice cream, they are more caloric because I just blended it and I increased its surface area and destroyed some of the function of the fiber that would have protected my body from the caloric surge. Plus, I compacted it and stuffed more food in less volume. It's like removing the protective plastic bubble wrap from a package and then mailing that package without bubble wrap in the rain. Fiber serves as a bubble wrap to protect your food from the shower of digested enzymes that can easily break your food apart so that your body can absorb the individual nutrients. There's simply no way I can chew my food to tiny, small specks. Now, after I fill up the trays, I gently drop and jiggle it on the counter to make all the spaces even. And now it's ready for the freezer. For the remainder of the dough, let's change it to a chocolate flavor and add a prebiotic soluble fiber called beta-glucans found in oats. And the best way to get oats and not to have to cook it beforehand is to fold in rolled oats about 1.5 to 3/4 cup. Now, there are several kinds of oats in the store. Quick oats has the highest glycemic index, so it is the least healthy. Rolled oats is better with a lower glycemic index. The glycemic index tells you how fast the food will increase your blood sugar compared to white bread, which is at 100. So the goal is to get something below 50. Steel cut oats would be even better as we are getting closer to the original whole grain. Oat groats are the best as it is the whole grain. Now I purposely chose oats because it helps to dry up the dough when it is too wet. But I also try to eat oats at least once a week. I actually don't like the mealy taste of oatmeal, and so if I eat oats, it's cooked oat groats. But when I'm too busy to cook oat groats, rolled oats are a handy substitute. And when you cook oats, you will notice it's kind of viscous, slimy, and sticky. And that's because it has a lot of soluble fiber like beta-glucan. And that fiber can help you trap calories and bind to cholesterol so you don't absorb it as much. I purposely also don't want to blend the oats because I want my body to digest it. Now next I will add cocoa powder simply because I like the taste of chocolate. Now I am just folding it in because I forgot to put it in earlier when I was using the hand blender. Now cocoa powder is a powerful anti-inflammatory food. This is so powerful that it can help people heal from sunburns and increase blood flow within 2 hours of drinking cocoa. Now a lot of people get plastic surgery to look younger. First of all, I don't have that kind of money, but I also don't want to just look young on my face. I actually want to reverse wrinkles and improve skin elasticity on my feet too, so that I don't get an ulcer and lose some toes as I grow older. And hence I eat flaxseed and soy daily. Now I'm adding cocoa powder, which is concentrated cocoa antioxidant polyphenols without the added sugar and saturated fat. I gave up chocolate, and what really made me give up chocolate a few years ago was the unacceptably high cadmium and lead content in most dark chocolates sold in the stores. But when I read that older men and women with arterial blood vessel disease improve their walking performance with just 3 teaspoons of cocoa powder, I've been adding cocoa powder to my food since then. Another study showed that 1.5 ounces of dark chocolate of at least 85% cocoa improved treadmill walking distance by 11% in people with peripheral arterial disease, and muscle biopsies showed more efficient mitochondria. Be careful about the lead and cadmium content in cocoa powder and dark chocolate, and I have a video on that if you are interested. Now, after the chocolate is evenly mixed, the chunky stuff goes in next. Now, in this bowl, I have pumpkin seeds, walnuts, dried currants, and cherries. The large ones were the dates that we already used in the dough. I just grabbed these items because these are foods I commonly eat. You can put other nuts and seeds. Now, everyone has their go-to foods, and these were actually not my go-to foods until I realized their antioxidant potential. So let's start with pumpkin seeds. They are one of the highest sources of magnesium at 168 milligrams per cup. It is also one of the best foods you can eat for your prostate, especially if you're having urinary issues from prostate hypertrophy. Now, I was taught in medical school that all men have prostate cancer if they live long enough, and that's only true if you're eating the standard American diet. Now, for us women, we don't have prostates, but pumpkin seeds, they seem to help reduce breast cancer risks. Pumpkin seeds are another one of my vanity foods as it helps with hair growth, and even the oil has been shown to improve hair growth. But I try to stick with the whole seeds, which has more anti-inflammatory benefits from the fiber and minerals like zinc and magnesium. Take a look at this nut. Doesn't it look like the brain? The shell is the skull, and the nut inside looks like our brain. Maybe that was God's way to tell us that this is good for our brains because it is an excellent source of omega-3, and it's a great food to clean your arteries. And amazingly, contrary to popular belief, it doesn't contribute to weight gain if you eat it in moderation. Walnuts are high in omega-3 fats called alpha-linolenic acid. Diets high in alpha-linolenic acid or polyunsaturated fats are good for your heart and arteries because they prevent irregular heartbeats and they improve blood flow. Now, heart disease is still the #1 killer. The heart's the only organ that doesn't get a break. You can hold your breath, but your heart is still beating. It takes 5 minutes to have permanent brain damage when your heart stops beating. So the best thing you can do to take care of your heart is to clean your arteries. And if you just replace some of your animal protein with a handful of walnuts, you can actually lower your risk of diabetes, which is a major cause of arterial inflammation to cause blockage. When you improve your blood flow, you will notice that your brain will significantly benefit. You'll just think better, you'll feel better, and you'll reduce your risk of dementia. And walnuts may even help to reduce amyloid plaques, which are prominent in Alzheimer's disease. Now, despite being high in calories, about a handful of whole walnuts a day can actually help you with weight loss. And this is because walnuts are packed with fiber, which feeds your largest immune organ, your gut microbiome. But fiber also delays the absorption of calories, and it will also simply prevent the absorption of some of the calories. So if you eat it chunky, you probably only absorb like 60% of the calories. And when your gut microbiome eats fiber, it also makes anti-inflammatory molecules called butyrate, as well as acetic acid, that increases your resting metabolic rate. In general, people who eat more whole food fiber appear to have less dementia too. Now, it's kind of strange to think of a body as having a way to clean itself. Now, let me explain, since you can't exactly take a sponge and soap and clean your blood vessels, unlike cleaning your skin or even your house. And if you don't clean your house, it will build up in dust and dirt and clutter. So busy people, they hire cleaners. However, if you have an excessive amount of trash, you can overwhelm your helpers, leading to heaps of garbage piled in the center of your room and overtime work for them. Have you ever felt frustrated when your boss asked you to work overtime? How did you handle that? Hopefully not like a toddler with a temper tantrum. Your body conducts a similar cleaning process within your arteries to remove the junk your body has been collecting since childhood. The more junk food you eat, the faster the junky ingredients collect. And you know your food is not all nutritious, and the body can't pee or poop many of those unwanted ingredients out. Have you ever thought what happens to those ingredients after you eat them? Depending on the ingredient, they can get trapped in the body in different closets like your liver or fat cells. And the ones that get left behind in the blood vessels, well, they're gobbled up by macrophages. Macrophages are the immune cells that are supposed to keep your arteries clean. They are your housekeepers. But the problem is they don't know how to get rid of the trash. Have you ever gone to a field trip and walked around holding your kids' leftover trash from their snacks? Wasn't it frustrating that you couldn't find a trash can and they kept giving you more food trash to hold? That's the job of your macrophages. They are like walking trash cans, and they don't just hold the trash, they eat it. The more junk you eat, the more they are working overtime, and the fatter your macrophages get, and the more frustrated they become. When macrophages get frustrated, we call that inflammation, and the trash they collect pile up as plaque buildup. And they don't just gently lay that plaque, they have tantrums, and they throw themselves against the arteries, compromising the walls. But the good news is, if you stop eating the junk, basically processed foods with high saturated fats and sugars, the macrophages, they'll get a break. And then they can catch up with their work, and then when there is no more work to be done, some of them will actually leave, reducing the size of the plaques and therefore open up your blood vessels. Now, when I was younger, I used to save my notebooks, thinking that one day I would need them. After 12 years of schooling and another 4 years of college taking notes and saving all my notebooks, I ended up with piles of giant office boxes cluttering my bedroom. Now, right before medical school, I decided to throw them away, and boy, did it free up a lot of space in my room, and I didn't realize that those boxes were causing clutter and dust. And likewise, until you clean up your plaque in your arterial walls, you won't know what it feels like to regain your blood flow. We have procedures called angioplasty that surgeons can attempt to open up large blood vessels when they get blocked. And generally, people who get these procedures, they have symptoms of pain or maybe non-healing wounds or some other serious complication from the lack of blood flow. When your pipes get blocked, the vessels get smaller, and like a river that is drying up, there is less flow and less blood pressure, so the body parts furthest away from the pump, your heart, and the ones with the tiniest blood vessels, they suffer the most. And hence, when you constantly have high blood pressure, eventually those small vessels, they get blocked, and that blockage will first cause pain, like back pain. Back pain affects 1 in 5 people, and many people have x-rays that show degenerative disc disease, and they're told that it's just wear and tear of old age. Well, it's actually due to poor blood flow, and changing your diet can significantly improve your symptoms. And this is why I literally eat nuts and seeds to keep my arteries clean. Now, the next ingredient are my currants. I actually usually use raisins, but I ran out of them. Currants, they look like raisins, but they're not related. They are less sweet, and they have a little bit more fiber compared to raisins. Either one is just a great way to add fiber and sweetness with every bite. So I just folded the nuts, seeds, and fruits into the dough. Oh, I forgot to mention the dried cherries. There is actually a new item in my house. Usually dried cherries are sold with added sugar, and those, they taste great, and they are also a great way to get cavities and gain weight. But if you find them without sugar, they're not as sweet, and they're definitely more healthy. Cherries, like other berries, are coveted for its anti-inflammatory power, especially against gout. Fresh and frozen are best, but I didn't have any. My dried cherries have no added sugar. I've been trying to eat more cherries daily to reduce inflammation. I meet a lot of people who love to drink tart cherry juice because it helps to prevent and treat gout, as well as improve blood sugars. I'm not really surprised, as cherries are one type of berries, and all berries are rich in antioxidants. But you know that there's a scale to grade how powerful powerful your food is to fight oxidation? Now, some foods have zero antioxidant power, like lemon lime Sprite, while green tea has 1,000 times more antioxidants than chicken breasts. Now, everyone should strive to eat at least a total of 10,000 points daily to counteract all the toxins in our environment. Now, here's a chart to estimate how many antioxidant points you are eating. Have you ever tried a high-protein cookie? Now, I used to think that was a healthy alternative because it had protein. So I actually trained myself to eat them as dessert, but it was terrible for my metabolism, promoting insulin resistance because of the high fat and processed carbohydrates, as well as the processed protein. Now, fat, by the way, it does not make isolated protein powder taste good either. And that's probably why they had to add so much sugar. But instead of using real food, companies added sugar substitutes like sugar alcohols with low glycemic indexes. But the problem is, just by thinking about your food, your brain secretes digestive hormones. And then by tasting it, you again secrete digestive hormones. And even though you are eating 0-calorie sweeteners, your metabolism is still anticipating the sugar that never comes. And this is really confusing for your body. It's such a letdown, so that your body ends up overcompensating at the next meal when you eat real sugar. In addition, it's been shown that if people know that they're eating fake sugar, they will have 0 calories, they'll actually eat more food and make up for those calories. So nobody ever loses weight by eating diet chemicals. And some of those cookies are actually not even low in carbohydrates. If you read the ingredients, you know it's processed food with flour and sugar. And these ingredients you actually never find in nature. If you ground your grain into powder, it would still have all of its nutrients and fiber. It wouldn't be like flour, and definitely wouldn't be like sugar. And the high protein, low carbohydrate dietary pattern may seem like a good idea because you don't see the high sugar spikes immediately when you eat. And part of it is because you're reducing your sugar, so you can. So even for people with type 1 diabetes who don't make insulin, if you don't give them any carbohydrates, they would not have abnormal sugars. That was literally how the disease was treated 100 years ago before insulin was discovered. And these patients, they were all prescribed a high-fat, low-carbohydrate diet to survive. And if they didn't do that, they would go into a life-threatening condition called diabetic ketoacidosis. And you can tell that they are in ketosis because their breath smells fruity like nail polish remover. Now, lots of internet influencers these days are showing how successful they are in reducing their blood sugar spikes, especially when they eat fat. But that's kind of the mistake they're making. They're only concerned about their sugar within the 2-hour mark. What if the sugar goes up after 2 hours? You wouldn't know unless you're checking it. So if you don't eat more food, then that sugar rise is from your last meal. And they're always so worried about the peak. The peak of how high you can get your sugar is less important than the overall time your blood sugar stays elevated. Did you know that men and women respond differently to a sugar challenge? Overall, women have higher blood sugars after eating, but men have higher fasting blood sugars. And this was observed in people without diabetes. And these influencers, they're wearing continuous blood glucose monitors, but it's still a relatively young and imperfect test. Did you know that home self-monitoring of blood sugars is really a modern invention and has only been around since the 1980s? And continuous glucose monitoring, that didn't happen until 1999. I actually knew a PhD biochemist who was working on that technology when I was in college. Home blood glucose has revolutionized how people with type 1 diabetes can stay healthy. On the other hand, it's grown to be an unhealthy obsession for those who don't have diabetes, and their dietary choices are all focused on lowering blood sugars. And they do this by eating fats and avoiding carbohydrates. I actually did that when I had gestational diabetes, and I realized that I can eat high-fat ice cream and not have my blood sugar rise as high about an hour or 2 hours later after eating it. I was actually really proud of myself. Fat slows down your gastric emptying time. And when my son was a toddler, he loved onion rings, which we let him have when we went out. Back then, he was underweight and hard to feed. So pretty much we let him eat whatever he wanted. And we were just happy he was eating. He was so little that his weight didn't even make it on the growth chart. And we were told to try to feed him fat to get him calories. And sure enough, the night he ate those onion rings, he would wake up screaming and throwing up because the food never left his stomach. It basically gave him bad reflux. And that's a problem with high-fat foods. And that's also why fat delays the blood sugar spikes when you eat carbohydrates. But it just delays it. It doesn't prevent it. And the sugar rises and stays high longer, and it just comes up later, especially if you have insulin resistance. And people blame the sugar as a cause of insulin resistance, but it is actually not the initial insult. But insulin resistant results in high blood sugars that then makes it worse. It's like catching a cold that causes a fever and then taking acetaminophen to get rid of the fever and thinking that since you have no fever, you don't have a cold. Now, will acetaminophen really help you get rid of the cold? No, and it can also give you liver failure and make your cold even worse. So high blood sugars actually worsen insulin resistance. And then after a while, they kind of feed on each other like a hamster wheel so that everyone's confused. But if you study people with untreated type 1 diabetes that can't produce any insulin, then you will understand how the body responds to sugar and fat and insulin. And before treatment, when they ate carbohydrates, they didn't actually get fatty liver, nor did they gain weight because they couldn't survive. They didn't have insulin, and so they couldn't metabolize blood sugar. In fact, those who had untreated type 1 diabetes get extremely dehydrated and super skinny. Without insulin, you can't store fat, and your metabolism, it's on super speed making ketones, which can get dangerously high because insulin is required to shut off the ketone production. That's also why it's so hard to stay on a ketogenic diet, because both carbohydrates and proteins will trigger the secretion of insulin. But most people end up eating the worst diet of all, a high fat and high carbohydrate diet. Now, the key to reversing and preventing insulin resistance and high blood sugar is a diet in good quality carbohydrates. Now, this study treated people without diabetes. They split people in 4 groups. Group 1 got a pretty good quality high protein diet. Group 2 got a high fat diet with oil, mayonnaise, cream, and butter. Group 3 got nothing to eat, so they were fasted. And Group 4, they were on a high carbohydrate diet with oats, brown rice, potatoes, fruit, and bread, including syrup, candy, and pastries. That sounds like mostly it's junky carbs, but that's kind of the standard American diet, except it didn't have meat and fat. After 2 days, all 4 groups were given a sugar challenge, and this is known as a glucose tolerance test. And this is how we diagnose gestational diabetes, because without a sugar challenge, you don't really know if you have insulin resistance. And take a look at this graph. The people who fasted had the highest glucose levels, followed by the people who ate primarily fat. And surprisingly, the people who ate the high carbohydrate diet had the best blood sugars. And this is only 2 days. And this is why I believe that prolonged fasting is a bad idea, besides the fact that you're missing the opportunity to eat healthful, essential nutrients. So based on this graph, eating a high saturated fat or basically fasting, not eating any food, they will actually worsen your insulin resistance. However, in the short term, if you lose weight by reducing your calories, no matter how you do it, that will likely overall improve your insulin resistance regardless of your diet quality. And it's really tempting to do that because everybody wants to lose weight, but I personally don't recommend that, as that is not a permanent solution. Eventually, you're going to have to maintain your weight because you can't lose weight forever. Both fat and our protein will delay the absorption of sugar, but ultimately when the sugar goes in your intestine, it will still get absorbed. You just don't see most of it if you only check within 2 hours of after your meals. And of course, if you don't eat carbohydrates, it makes sense that you won't see a sugar spike because you aren't eating any sugar. But the reality is most people like to eat carbohydrates, and for many decades, physicians knew that eating fat increased people's insulin requirements. In fact, many papers, they show that dietary protein and dietary fat, they both increase people's glucose rise. But instead of treating the root cause of the high blood sugar, people believe that reducing carbohydrates and increasing fat could reduce sugar levels. And indeed it does. I mean, that's common sense. If you take away candy, you won't be measuring any candy in the blood. But if you have a problem metabolizing candy, would you really fix that metabolic defect simply by not giving yourself candy? If you lose weight, you will definitely fix that defect. But this is not a sustainable diet. At a certain point, you have to keep your weight. So the question still remains, will removing carbohydrates improve your insulin resistance? Well, in mice, if you take away all carbs, they get more insulin resistant. People aren't mice, but it seems like we have more similar biochemistry because a high-fat, low-carbohydrate ketogenic diet makes people more insulin resistant, and the metabolic dysfunction actually go way beyond glucose regulation. The cookie we are making is packed with protein, because it is packed with beans. Beans are one of the richest source of plant-based protein because it is literally a dried seed. Now keep in mind that all whole plants have complete proteins. Even lettuce, there are 18 amino acids in total to make protein. And here's a breakdown of the amino acids in 3 lettuces eaten in Nigeria. All of them have all 18 amino acids. They have different proportions, but nevertheless, they have all 18. And this is why animals like deer, mice, rabbits, and reptiles can't eat lettuces to grow. Now, this is a nutrient profile of romaine lettuce. It has 195 ingredients. And obviously, this lettuce has much more than just amino acids. Now, I need roughly 50 grams of protein a day to meet my daily protein requirements based on the USDA calculator. Now, I could theoretically get them from eating romaine lettuce if I ate 9 pounds in a day, but that wouldn't be very practical. However, if I make my desserts with protein-rich whole plants, like from beans, I can actually achieve most of my protein, and this is why I diversify the ingredients in my desserts. And if you've watched my other videos, I'm all about food quality. And I don't rate food quality by their protein content or their high carbohydrate content, but I rate it by their antioxidant content and the amount of fiber that they have. Now, it needs to be high in both for me to want to eat that meal. And beans, they have some of the highest antioxidant potential of all foods. So after you mix your nuts and seeds and the fruit together in the dough, then you just scoop it with a spoon to make little tiny round circle shapes. And then you bake it at 325 for like 15 minutes. And the baking is just to dry it up because really all the ingredients are edible on its own. So it roughly makes about 12 cookies depending on how big your cookies are. I would kind of flatten it up so that it can evenly heat up and dry up. So when you're done baking it, let it cool and then try one. Let me know what you think. And I eat this for breakfast. Sometimes I have it as my lunch. And sometimes I have it as dessert after dinner. And lots of times I actually pack this as a high protein snack to eat. And everyone should be striving for a daily intake of at least 0.8 milligrams per kilogram of protein a day, depending on your age and your activity. But when I'm already overachieving, there's really no point in spending more time on that subject. And I always try to focus on the subjects that I'm the weakest in. And most people, they're like me, they're overachievers. So they actually eat twice as much protein as they need. So they're getting like an A+++ on their protein report card. Unfortunately, you can't store protein. If you eat extra protein, you basically will either pee it out or you store it as fat. And your health status is not just based on your blood sugar spike or your protein amount. In fact, if all you did was eat pure protein, you would get pretty tired of eating that pure protein and you would just get pretty tired, period. Because protein is not a good source of energy. It also has a limited capacity to help you counteract oxidative stress. So when you eat those processed high protein bars, they're not only expensive, but they also tax your health. So I would recommend sticking to real food, whole food. And if you want to get a nutrient-dense, quick and easy snack that's high in protein, antioxidants, and fiber, then try some nuts and seeds. But if you're looking for protein and you want to know which protein sources are also rich in antioxidant power, then watch this next video.